If you've been on YouTube over the last few years, you've probably seen Iceberg videos. After all, basically everyone and their mothers have made one, whether that be about films, TV shows or video games. Now, if you've been doing a pat trick for the last few years and you don't know anything about icebergs, basically what an iceberg is, it's a great way to rank theories based on their plausibilities. For example, the very top is the concrete, definitive, this is how it is. The middle bit is the crazier theories but still plausible, and the very depths, the very bottom of the iceberg, is the batshit insane theories. I really don't normally do these longer videos, so this is kind of a first for me. I really do hope you enjoy. For the first entry into the top level of the iceberg, we have the fact that you can actually see Radhn is Marika inside the original 2019 Elden Ring teaser trailer. There's actually a few moments where you can see this. It goes from Radhn's long braided hair into Marika's long flowing hair. Radhn here has blonde hair, so this suggests that this is a point in development where the whole giant storyline hadn't been thought up yet. I've got to say, the fact that this storyline had been thought up years in advance absolutely blew my mind, and it just really reinforces what I've always thought about From Software. We are told from multiple item descriptions that Mohg sent his missionaries out to spread the word of his dynasty. And apart from that, we are not told anything else more in writing. But we actually don't need writing to tell us what occurred in this time period, because there exists a ruin called the Writhed-Blood Ruins inside the Atlas Plateau. The Writhed-Blood Ruins are home to many a Lord of Blood followers, from the bleed dogs to sanguine nobles to these blobby blob bastards that I'm really not sure what they are, but they are definitely of the Lord of Blood. Along with all that is multiple blood roses. But what is the significance of this? I believe the Writhed-Blood Ruins are a forgotten battleground. Everything suggests that some massive fight happened here, not to mention the dead sanguine noble weapons found deep underneath the ruins, which is guarded by another sanguine noble. We know that in the wake of the Shattering, and even before that, Morgoth guarded the Atlas Plateau and the Golden Capital. It really wouldn't be out of character or at all strange to think that the Omen King would want to defend his land, and so when his twin brother sends his missionaries to the Atlas Plateau, I'm sure the reception wasn't welcome. Not to mention that it's literally a ruin, and it looks like if you simply blowed in its direction it'd fall over. As soon as you boot up Elden Ring and you enter into Limgrave, you're met by Vare, who's a white mask. Now everyone's seen the meme, oh you're bloody maidenless, all that shabam. But did you know that the white masks actually have a really tragic story? The white masks used to be war surgeons, effectively known as mercy killers, until they were abducted by the Lord of Blood and pumped full of accursed blood. Only one of these war surgeons survived, that being Vare. He may have survived physically, but I think, given the dialogue we see of him, his mind was completely shattered by the accursed blood. Knowing all of this, Vare's quest becomes so much more sadder. The final dialogue of him calling out for his lord, a lord that refused to come to his aid. It's truly heartbreaking, and it really, at the end of the day, shows Elden Ring's amazing storytelling. Elden Ring takes a lot of heavy inspiration from Norse mythology, from its gods to its obsession with the runic alphabet. Another part of Norse mythology it takes a lot of inspiration from would be the Yggdrasil. If you don't know what the Yggdrasil is the world tree. The Yggdrasil is seen in the form of the erdtree. Both the erdtree and the Yggdrasil symbolise life in both of their own respective worlds. That's without mentioning that the imagery of the erdtree seen in depictions all throughout the lands between really heavily resembles the imagery we see of the Yggdrasil, dating back hundreds if not thousands of years. Did you know that Mesmer is actually mentioned in base game Elden Ring? This really rocked my world when I first realised this, but there's actually two mentions of Mesmer, the first of which being the Impaler catacombs. I've seen people and ahhing, oh is this the case, is that not the case? But I really do think this is talking about Mesmer. My reasoning for believing this is every piece of promotional imagery calls Mesmer the Impaler. To add even more to this, in the very same area, literally a minute or two walk away, is a spirit which talks about Marika's unwanted child. Now, originally everyone thought this had to do with the mausoleums or even Godwyn, but I believe that, like the 2019 trailer, I 100% believe that this is a masterful hint by From Software. By the fact that they did this in 2019, would it be so far-fetched for them to do it again? What do you all think? Do you think this is Mesmer, or do you think I'm just overthinking this? I'm really curious what you all have to say, because honestly, some of the comments I get blow my mind. They just simply do. They rock my world, and I'm like, holy shit, how did I not think of that? They are amazing. I love reading you guys' comments. If you've played Elden Ring whatsoever, you've probably at some point run into this guy. This guy's Sir Gideon Ofnir. This old bag of bones is a bit of a creep, a bit of a weirdo, but there's even more creepiness to him than you might have originally thought. The man, the myth, the legend, Gideus Oatcakes, actually stalks you. You know those fancy scarabs which give you shit all throughout the lands between? They're actually Gideon's. Gideon's mark is seen on the back of these scarabs, which is already really bloody weird. I'm not sure why he's just going around marking these random bugs. It sort of reminds me of Woody from Toy Story. So Gideon Ofnir is just going around branding his toys with these little eye things. I just find this shit too funny. This senile old man is just going around getting this like hot steak and stabbing it into fucking scarabs. I'm just convinced that Sir Gideon Ofnir is just Andy reincarnated at this point. But back on topic, as I've just digressed 30 odd seconds. Sir Gideon Ofnir does stalk us. The scarabs are used to stalk us. Sir Gideon Ofnir is all-knowing. How is this the case? Well, it seems like he's actually using these scarabs to go around the world inconspicuously and spy on everyone. This honestly helps shed so much light on everything to do with Sir Gideon Ofnir, how he knows so much. And I think it's a really, really cool detail that I'm so glad From Software added. What we're going to talk about now is going to sound like a bit of a batshit insane theory. The kind of theory you'd expect to be on the bottom of this iceberg, but is in fact 100% true. Miyazaki has directly stated that Marika is from the Shadow Realm, which is crazy. I wouldn't think that he would confirm that, but he has, he's done a Miyazaki and just done some crazy shit. The implications from what Miyazaki has said is absolutely bloody crazy. Marika and her people are known as the Newmen, who are said to be Dearsons from another world. Now, I had theories that perhaps due to technology, the other world is actually just beyond the fog. But, after Miyazaki has said this, we can say that these Newmen and Marika are from the Shadow Realm. Which isn't really that outlandish when you actually think that we see tons of people in the Shadow Realm in the DLC trailer. There is multiple civilizations going on here, not to mention there's a war which at least requires two sides. The amount of secrets Marika is hiding is mind-blowing, and we're really just going to have to wait till the DLC comes out to fully understand what's at stake and what's actually going on here. I would not have expected Miyazaki to spoon-feed this to us, but I am glad, I guess for once, that he's giving us answers. When it comes to From Software, and Miyazaki more specifically, we normally end up more confused than when we were to begin with when we look for answers, but for it to be told to us definitively is a breath of fresh air that I am quite happy about. Malekith's boss room has easily become one of the most iconic boss rooms inside of From Software's games. Something you may or may not have seen is the fact that there's a massive Elden Ring mural at the back of Malekith's boss room. This mural is a lot different compared to the usual Elden Ring mural that you see all throughout the lands between, and you might be wondering, why is this the case? We don't know every single demigod, we simply don't. The few that we do know are the significant main ones, but there were offshoot demigods that we simply don't know the names of. I believe this Elden Ring takes into consideration these demigods. What happened to these demigods, I cannot tell you. Maybe we'll hear about them in the DLC, maybe they sided with Mesmer and were banished to the Shadow Realm. We simply don't know, but this to me seems like a primordial Elden Ring. It makes sense considering Malekith is Marika's brother, so the fact that he would know about these extra demigods makes a lot of sense, especially considering he is the guardian of the most important part of the Elden Ring. Something you may or may not know is that these hunking teddy bears are in fact dragons. Now you might be thinking, dude, what the fuck are you on about, man? These are not dragons, these are bears, these are teddy bears. But no, these are actually dragons. If you see their eyes, they actually have the eyes of the dragon communion. How they came to be in service of the dragons, I don't know. How they became dragons, I don't know. But these guys, these rune bears, are dragons. It's just another example of the amazing storytelling inside of Elden Ring. Year after year, From Software just keeps baffling me. And that, ladies and gents, wraps up the first part of this video. That was the top half of the Elden Ring Iceberg explained. Moving on to the middle now, which is where the theories are a bit more crazy, but still plausible and still have a lot of reasoning behind them, before the final parts where we delve into the batshit insane. For the first of the middle tier, we have the fact that Mesmer may be the god of the snake outer god. If you don't know, inside of Rykard's lair is multiple depictions of a god snake. Now, it might be easy to think that this is the god-devouring serpent, but I am not so sure. I feel like this is a lot older. We are told from item descriptions that Rykard merely reinvented fire and snake incantations. These snake incantations were far older than Rykard. I believe that Mesmer may be the one to have possessed and perhaps even developed these incantations. My main reason for believing this is the fact that Mesmer is heavily linked to snakes. He has two snakes which seem to be living from his body. Whether they're grafted or not is unknown, but I feel like there's a bit more to it than simply grafting. I think these snakes may be actually a part of Mesmer. We know that the Golden Order hates anything that's different. It just basically says piss off, go fuck yourself, if you have anything that differs from their idea of perfect order. And I believe this was exactly the case with Mesmer. Maybe, like Melania, he was cursed at birth, instead being born with two snakes attached to him, wherein later in life he would come under the influence of the outer god that gave him said curse, just as Melania did unintentionally with the scarlet rot. Just a little TLDR for you all, that is my theory and my interpretation. The next one I'm going to talk about is something that is perhaps a bit more controversial. I believe that Shabriri may not be as evil as everyone thinks he is. We are told everything about Shabriri through item descriptions, and yet we blindly believe it. The nomadic merchants are said to have committed a heinous crime, and yet we find out that is in fact a lie. So who's to say that the same item descriptions that tell us that aren't also lying about Shabriri? I do think there is some nefarious stuff going on, as we find out from the May Chaos Take the World. But I also think there's something to be argued that maybe Shabriri isn't as evil, and perhaps the atrocities he apparently committed didn't actually happen, or at least someone else did them and Shabriri took the blame. It's really hard to know, but there is some things that point towards the fact that maybe Shabriri isn't as bad as everyone paints him out to be. The next one might seem a bit nefarious, a bit goofy, a bit mischievous, but I believe that Fortisax and Godwyn had children. Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin are no strangers to strange storytelling, and I think this is a great example. Fortisax the Ancient Dragon and Godwyn the Golden are said to have been incredibly close. After all, it was their friendship and relationship which brought the Ancient Dragon cult into Lendale and brought it into the Golden Order's favour. Fortisax even followed Godwyn in Deathblight, being consumed eventually. But where do children play into this? The Golden lineage is talked about all throughout Elden Ring. The Golden lineage is traced back to Godfrey. Now, the only child of Godfrey that we know of that this could fit as to have continued the Golden lineage is none other than Godwyn the Golden. But who is the mother? Who is the consort to Godwyn the Golden? Well, I think it's Fortisax. My reasoning for believing this is in Godric's boss fight, a piece of dialogue is actually said which is heavily overlooked all the time. Godric actually calls the dragon head, which he grafts onto his arm, his kin. Now, kin, as you might already know, means family. I truly believe that Fortisax and Godwyn had mutant god dragon babies, and that is the Golden lineage. It's a really neat little story, and honestly, it's one of my favourite inside of Elden Ring. If you've beaten Elden Ring, you may or may not have run into the item, the Mimic Veil. If you don't know what the Mimic Veil does, it turns you into a certain object depending on what area you're in. This is really interesting because we actually find out from the item description that the Mimic Veil is also known as Marika's Mischief. Marika as in the all-powerful, all-knowing god of the lands between. From this one item description there is a lot of implications that come of it, but I think the biggest one for me is, if she has the ability to disguise and hide, and this is her thing, who's to say she isn't hiding who she truly is right now? We know she's from the Shadow Realm, as we talked about earlier. She hid that from everyone too. The person we see inside the Elden Ring DLC trailer is malformed and is like literally a husk of a person. I think maybe Marika isn't who she truly says she is. And if that turns out to be the case, that is going to be such a cool twist. I really like the idea that maybe Marika's just this Cthulhu monster. I think that would be really, really cool. But I guess time will tell. About 8-9 months ago, I made a video talking about the massive giant skeletons located all around the lands between. Mind-bogglingly, that video now has 211,000 views, which just blows my mind every time I think about it, and I can't help but thank everyone who supported that video. Something I talked about in that video was the spears which pierce all of the giants. Now, back then when I looked at the spears, I noticed a symbol on the spears. I mentioned it and everyone said I was kind of crazy for thinking it was anything but the symbol for the Briars of Sin. But since the Elden Ring DLC trailer has come out, I think it's time to revisit that, and I'm theorising that maybe this symbol is in fact Mesmer's. The reason I believe this is due to the fact that the spears look quite similar to Mesmer's spear that he uses inside the DLC trailer. The Briars of Sin are incredibly mysterious, along with the blood star which accompanies them and the fire monks which strangely follow them around. These three unexplained things, mixed with Mesmer which is equally unexplained, would really tie everything all together, if it actually turned out that this was exactly the case. The Round Table Hold is Elden Ring's hub area. Every single one of From Software's games have one of these. I believe though the Round Table Hold might be in the elusive Shadow Realm of the DLC. Just for starters, the Round Table Hold we actually go to, that has the Table of Lost Grace, isn't the real Round Table Hold. The real Round Table Hold is at the Golden Capital. This already sheds a lot of confusion onto what the Round Table Hold we inhabit actually is. But there's actually some hidden details which give us a bit more insight into this. This comes from the fact of where the Round Table Hold actually is on the map. The Round Table Hold is on the bottom left of the map, located within the clouds. This might seem like a really insignificant piece of design, but I think there's so much more to this. The clouds on Elden Ring's map have been mysterious for a long time, but I believe it to be some kind of barrier. More specifically, the elusive fog that we hear so much about. Hell, who's to say that these are even clouds? They look like clouds to us, but maybe they are simply someone's interpretation of what the fog looks like, trying to understand the incomprehensible perhaps. There's also the fact that the cloud in the middle of the map, or at least what we think is a cloud, has a massive hole in the sandbox, which is really, really strange. I'm not sure if you could see this hole from the land, but I'm pretty sure you can't. So it makes you wonder why on earth they would even do that there. From Software never makes mistakes, or at least not to this extent, so there must be something to this, right? The importance of these clouds is further reinforced when you go to the erdtree and the clouds are more erratic up there. If you don't know what I mean, they're all spiky up by the erdtree on the map, whereas they're calmer down the left hand side, the right hand side and the bottom side, which is really odd. It seems to be completely isolated to the erdtree area, which, as we know, is the home of Miquella before he was kidnapped. The very same Miquella whose withered arm is going to transport us to the DLC. Coincidence? I don't think it's a coincidence, guys. Although I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. Ranni is no hero. Ranni is a villain. I know a lot of you are consumed by lustful desires. I know when I've made videos or topics talking about Ranni, and I've said that I think she's an evil bastard, a lot of people disagree because you want to wipe her up. If Ranni hadn't have done what she'd done, if she hadn't orchestrated the Night of the Black Knives, all the tragedies that happened in the lands between really could have been avoided. So many tragedies are chalked up to the Night of the Black Knives. The shattering that followed it was the Night of the Black Knives. Godwyn's death, the Night of the Black Knives. Marika going insane, That's possibly due to the Night of the Black Knives. So many demigods dead on the Night of the Black Knives. It's really all chalked up to the Night of the Black Knives. So I find it really hard to believe that people still, 2.5 years later, believe that Ranni is a saint and a hero and someone you should follow. I think she's probably one of the most evil characters inside of Elden Ring. The only reason people like her is because she's got 4 hands and they think she's going to do some freaky shit with them. If you've been in the Atlas Plateau, you've probably seen the windmill villages. There's about 3 of them. They're a bunch of weird buggers, they just keep dancing everywhere, but I think that I know the reason behind this. If you don't know, mass hysteria is a condition affecting a group of persons characterised by excitement or anxiety, irritable behaviour or beliefs, or inexplicable symptoms or illness. This already sounds like the windmill villages given their erratic and strange behaviour, but it's further reinforced when you realise one of the most famous cases of mass hysteria is identical to the windmill villages. In 1518, in the town of Strasbourg, I think I pronounced that right, a woman named Frey Trophea started dancing fervently and uncontrollably. Soon dozens joined her, and by August, this started in July, 400 victims had been claimed. This was later chalked up to mass hysteria. The same sort of thing seems to be exactly happening inside of the windmill villages. It always baffles me how many secrets are hidden within Elden Ring and within From Software's games, and this is just another one to add to the list. I absolutely love these games, and I hope they never stop making them. We've had some relatively tame ones, so let's get on to a bit more wacky shit. I believe that Rossus will be one of the main characters of the DLC, along with the Ghost Flame. I've for a long time said that the Ghost Flame is probably going to have a lot more bigger impact on the DLC than people are saying. If you don't know, the Ghost Flame governs death, or at least in some prehistoric age it used to govern death. Item descriptions echo how similar it was to Grace, so it really makes you wonder, if the Ghost Flame is exactly like Grace, then it needs a god, it needs an outer god, it needs a great tree, all of which is located within the Shadow Realm. The Shadow Realm which Marika is actually from. Marika, who is at the core of the Golden Order, and Grace. It makes you wonder, maybe, just maybe, this Ghost Flame is in fact from the Shadow Realm. The Ghost Flame comes from death. We see this from the Hawk Knights who burned the soldiers of their kin and the Ghost Flame was born within them. The Death Birds who are of death are covered in the Ghost Flame and wield it masterfully. And finally, Rossus, the Usherer of Death. If you don't know what an usher is, it's a person who helps you to your seat, helps you out, cares for your needs. Did you also know that the Rossus statues actually do hold the Ghost Flame in their palms? Not to mention the wheat insignias which are located on the base of his statues, which look awfully similar to the ones that are seen in the DLC trailer. Everything is starting to point towards the fact that maybe Rossus is going to have a massive involvement in the DLC, not to mention the fact that we know so little about him. This is going a bit more crazy, batshit insane, but Marika does have a half-brother, Malekith. Who's to say that Rossus isn't also another sibling of Marika? We know that Marika gets her power from the Shadow Realm. Maybe, just like, say, Miquella, she is a child of a god. Ennea is located within the Round Table Hold, the very same shadowy Round Table Hold we've just talked about a few minutes prior. I believe that perhaps Ennea is in cahoots with Marika. Contrary to so many other characters inside of Elden Ring, Ennea the Finger Reader is incredibly nice to us and offers a lot of guidance and information throughout your Elden Ring journey. But I think there is a lot more to Ennea than people originally thought. Ennea condones the committing of a cardinal sin. Yes, she has her reasonings, but given what other finger readers have to say about it, it seems pretty odd. There's also the fact that if the Round Table Hold is in fact inside of the Shadow Realm, it makes you wonder, how does Ennea fit into all of this? How does she have a part to play? Marika wanted the Tarnished to come back from beyond the fog to the lands between to become her Elden Lord, and she would definitely need help for that. So I think it's not so far-fetched to think that maybe, just maybe, Ennea is in cahoots with Marika. After all, Marika would need help. She's literally, at this present time, locked inside the erdtree. There's no way she's getting out of that. Ennea was probably the best option in regards to this, to help her in this goal. Something that I find a bit strange is the fact the fingers are here. Are these fingers actually even communicating with the greater will? You see, these fingers, if this is all the case, then surely the fingers would know about what was going on in the Round Table Hold, and by proxy, Marika and Ymir. The only reason I believe this is because everything we know about the fingers is completely wrong in this aspect. They're loyal servants of the greater will, so why would they be following against the greater will's wishes? Unless perhaps the greater will is in fact in agreement with Marika. We simply don't know. It's not like we're talking to the greater will or having their words apart from what the fingers say told to us. And that wraps up the middle half of the Iceberg. I really hope you guys are enjoying so far. If you are, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. If you have got to this point, genuinely, thank you so much. All the support recently has honestly rocked my world, and it's melted my heart, and I'm so thankful. So thank you, everyone. Starting off with the first batshit insane theory, we have the fact that maybe the Alabaster Lords and their followers are trying to bring about an eclipse. The Alabaster Lords and their followers are extremely mysterious. We know next to nothing about them, except for the fact that a long time ago, a meteor hit the ground and the Alabaster Lords were born. The Alabaster Lords are literally aliens. They've took an Uber down to the lands between and have repopulated and made a whole civilization down here. This is already such a cool storyline, but it gets even more interesting when you look at the types of things that are attached to the Alabaster Lords and their followers. A lot of circular imagery is seen, and to me, this seems very similar to an eclipse. We really don't know much about Elden Ring's space, but by the fact that we know the Elden Star carrying the Elden Beast is a star which shot down from the sky, it makes you think that maybe there is life up in space, only they don't have the technological advancements to actually go up there. An eclipse is when the moon, which is in space, eclipses the sun, which is in space. So is it so far-fetched to think that these space aliens have something to do with the eclipse? I guess only time will tell, and I honestly won't be very surprised if it turns out the Alabaster Lords are in cahoots with, say, Miquella or space guys up in space. For our next crazy theory, Boc is a demigod. Boc is very mysterious. We know little about him. We know he's a demi-human, that he's from one of the demi-human caves, but there is some interesting dialogue where he talks about his mother. Boc's mother taught him everything he knew about being a seamster. He knows a lot. Compared to the other demi-humans, he's a lot more academically inclined, I guess you could say. We know that there were peace treaties with the Golden Order and with Raya Lucaria. We see this in the form of the demi-human queens who wield staff specifically made by Raya Lucaria to suit their low intelligence. Would it be so far-fetched to think that maybe some kind of marriage pact happened between the Golden Order and the demi-humans? I'm not saying it's necessarily Marika, but maybe some kind of demigod was courted off to the demi-humans. The reason why Boc might not be treated so well, as he's treated terribly by his kin. Perhaps after the Golden Order fell, the demi-humans' perception of the demigods changed, and definitely not for the best. I feel like I need to say, especially for this one, that the chance of this being the case are extremely low. Please don't take this as definitive fact, as there's a very low chance it will actually come to fruition. Since the first snippets of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC released, and we learnt about the Shadow Realm, we've always assumed that the Lands Between is the original, and that the Shadow Realm is, well, the Shadow Realm, a copy. But what if the Shadow Realm is the original, and the Lands Between is a copy? Don't you think it's a bit strange that the Lands Between is just encircled by fog? It's just there, it's just awkwardly there. We know there's stuff beyond the fog, but the Lands Between, in of itself, is just there. So where is everywhere else? Where is the Lands Between in correlation to everything else? Well, maybe the Lands Between is simply a separate dimension which is a split off of the Shadow Realm and everything else that exists outside of the Lands Between. What's really strange is if this is the case, it sort of reminds me of Miquella's journey in of himself. Marika is from the Shadow Realm, and she's ventured from the Shadow Realm into this other world and has claimed it and is starting his own little order there, just like how perhaps Miquella is doing it in the Shadow Realm, coming from the Lands Between. It's great parallels and, once more, great storytelling on the behalf of From Software. The next one is a theory I've held for a really long time, but is one that I really, really love. I think that Elden Ring's map looks really similar to a point in the Earth's history, aka Pangaea. If you don't know what Pangaea is, which I don't blame you if you don't, basically it's a point in the Earth's history where all the continents were conjoined, aka a supercontinent. Basically, when the tectonic plates shift, different continents shift, and at one point in time they were all connected. If you look at Elden Ring's map, it honestly looks like the different areas are simply stitched together with a needle and thread. This very much reminds me of the tectonic plates, and I believe that is what is happening here. I believe that the different areas of the lands between haven't always been connected. I don't know how to feel about this one. I'm really curious to see what you all have to think. I've thought that this is possibly the case for a really long time, so as always, I'm really curious to hear what you all have to say. The next one gets even more wackier. What if Hugh is Marika's pop-ups? What if Marika entrapped her own father inside of the Round Table Hold? We know that Marika had some kind of parent, after all she was born. Regardless of how she was born, whether that have been through Athena mind babies or through conventional means. Taking that into consideration, we hear nothing about Marika's father. All we know is that she gained her powers from the Shadow Realm. What if she drained her father's powers away, and the result was Hugh? Hugh, who is this crippled old man shackled to this Shadow Realm Round Table Hold. We know nothing of Hugh's past. All we know is that he is a slave and a prisoner to the Round Table Hold, forced to create weapons that could kill a god. Messing with your family's lives and ruining it is a really big key point inside of Elden Ring. These families are dysfunctional to say the least, so I really wouldn't be surprised if this is the route they went down. It would also be a really cool, interesting twist to Elden Ring's story. Plus, it would also add so much more to Hugh's story, a character which I already love. At the precipice of goofiness and wackiness, we have the theory that the Tarnished is in fact the One Great. After all the other outer gods split off from the One Great, I imagine the One Great was pretty powerless, so the result of this may have been this weak human form whose now goal is to become a god, or kill a god, take their power, and become the powerful One Great as before. The Three Fingers and the Flame of Frenzy take a heavy, keen interest in the player character. What do these characters want? Well, these characters want everything to become one with the One Great again. That is the goal of the Frenzied Flame. So, if the Tarnished character is the One Great, would it be so far-fetched to think that maybe the Flame of Frenzy and the Three Fingers would like to help the Tarnished? The real question here is, who else is in the know if this is the case? Does Marika know? Does Ranni know? Does anyone know? Or is this simply a game for the One Great, aka us? And that wraps up the final tier of the Iceberg. I really do hope you have enjoyed this one. Now normally my videos are like 10 to 12 to 13 minutes long, but this video as of right now is 33 minutes long, which is mental. I know it's been a bit longer, but I really do hope you have enjoyed. Normally I end up talking for bloody ages in these intros, but it's already been a really long video, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I really do hope you have a great rest of your day, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.